Okay, so this set of materials you sent over, it really feels like we're digging up something buried, doesn't it? Like a time capsule.
It really does. We've got episode summaries, some production details, what the critics thought back then.
Right, and it all centers on this one specific piece of television.
Jose Chung's from Outer Space. Episode 20, Season 3 of The X-Files, April 12th, 1996.
Wow, yeah, feels like a different era almost. And looking at these sources, it's clear this isn't just about, remembering the plot.
No, definitely not. It's about why this episode sticks with people, why it has this almost legendary feel to it.
Exactly. So our mission here, for you listening, is to dive into not just the story, but how it was made, the weird circumstances, and why it still resonates. We're hoping to connect some dots, find those aha moments.
Let's start with the story itself then, because even within the X-Files universe, this one stands out.
For sure. The basic setup is Mulder and Scully heading to Class County, Washington.
Right. Investigating an alleged alien abduction, 2 teenagers, Harold and Chrissy. Seems pretty standard X-Files.
But it gets weird fast. It's not really part of the main myth arc.
No, it leans heavily into humor and, crucially, unreliable narrators. That's the core mechanic here.
Yeah, you get everyone's different version of the same events, which is where all the comedy and the confusion comes from.
It immediately makes you question, what's really going on.
Yeah.
We start with Harold and Chrissy's abduction. Classic Greys.
But then they're interrupted by this other bigger alien, and the Greys start panicking in English.
Which is just bizarre. Then Scully comes in, sees Chrissy's clothes all inside out and backward.
Her initial thought is date rape, the skeptical explanation.
But Harold insists it was aliens. He even passes a lie detector test about the abduction part, despite some initial confusion about, the assault accusation.
It just keeps twisting. Then Chrissy's under hypnosis.
First, she remembers the spaceship, right?
Yeah.
And the cigarette-smoking alien saying, "This is not happening."
Iconic line.
Totally. But then she remembers it differently, claims it was the military who abducted her, brainwashed her.
So already, we have multiple conflicting core stories. And then Rucky Crickenson enters the picture.
Oh, Roki. The lineman.
Yeah.
His story is, it's out there.
He says he saw the abduction, then gets visited by men in black.
Played by Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek. Which is just surreal casting.
Amazing. And they tell him it was just Venus he saw.
Yeah, brushing it off. But then Roki says he meets Lord Kinboat.
This giant, bizarre alien figure.
Who takes him to the center of the Earth.
I mean, where do you even go from there?
Right. And then there's Blaine, the sci-fi nerd.
His perspective is totally different again. He thinks he sees Mulder and Scully recovering an alien body.
But he thinks they're the men in black. And he's convinced Mulder looked genuinely shocked.
Plus, he claims Scully was actually a man in disguise who threatened him.
And he films this autopsy.
Which seems to show the alien is just an Air Force pilot in a suit, Major Robert Valley.
Blaine's whole theory is that Mulder was playing this complex game to trick the military into revealing a second missing pilot, Lieutenant Schaefer.
It's wonderfully convoluted, so many layers.
Then Scully picks up the narrative again. Mulder finds Schaefer naked and dazed.
And Schaefer's story... He says he and his partner were dressed as aliens, flying a secret military craft, but then they got abducted, along with the teenagers, by real aliens.
And just like that, he's whisked away by the military. Story contained.
But wait, there's more. The diner cook gives another version.
Right. He just remembers Mulder being there alone, obsessively eating sweet potato pie and asking about UFOs. No big investigation scene like Blaine described.
It completely contradicts Blaine's account of Mulder being there with the alien body.
And then there's Scully's own memory lapse. She wakes up, Mulder's asleep in her room.
But she has no memory of the men in black being there or being put in a trance, which Mulder does remember happening to her.
So even our main characters have conflicting memories of the same night.
Finally, they find the crashed Air Force plane and the bodies of both pilots, Valley and Schaefer, which seems final, but still feels weirdly unresolved.
And the whole thing, the entire episode's structure, is framed by this novelist, Jose Chung.
Right, played by Charles Nelson Riley. He's interviewing Scully, trying to write a book about it all.
And Mulder actually begs him not to publish it. He's worried it'll just make UFO researchers look ridiculous.
Which, of course, Chung completely ignores.
Naturally. The episode ends with snippets from Chung's published book telling us what happened to everyone.
And it's all pretty cynical and darkly funny. Rocky starts a cult.
Blaine becomes a lineman, but keeps searching for UFOs.
Chrissy dumps Harold and becomes a philanthropist.
And Mulder is described as a ticking time bomb of insanity.
Ouch. And Chung's final word in the book, still no real proof of aliens, just stories.
It's that layering, that deliberate ambiguity that makes it so brilliant.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the Tangled story. But the story behind the story, the making of it, that's where it gets even more fascinating, kind of mysterious.
It really is. You look at these sources and you see these ideas were percolating with the writer, Darren Morgan, for a while.
Yeah, it wasn't just whiffed up overnight. He'd been reading about hypnosis, apparently.
Right, and also about that theory, the one that suggests some UFOs might actually be secret military planes designed to look alien.
So those two ideas sort of fused together.
Exactly. And the character of Jose Chung himself has this great origin story.
Oh yeah, the Truman Capote thing.
Apparently, during a casting session for something else, an actor did a Capote impression.
And boom, light bulb moment for Morgan. A Capote-esque man writing about this weird case, kind of like in Cold Blood, but aliens.
They apparently thought about Rip Taylor first for Chung. Can you imagine?
Wow, that would have been different. Charles Nelson Riley was perfect, though.
He really was.
Yeah.
And speaking of casting coups, Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek as the Men in Black.
Just genius. So unexpected. I read Morgan actually wanted Johnny Cash for one of them originally.
Johnny Cash as a Man in Black. That would have been incredible. But Trebek and Ventura, it just adds to the weirdness.
And Trebek being credited as himself, just blurring those lines even more.
Totally. And then there's Lord Kinboat. That design.
So bizarre. But it was intentional, right? A tribute.
Yeah, a deliberate homage to the stop-motion legend Ray Harryhausen. They wanted that slightly jerky retro feel.
How'd they do that?
They filmed the actor, stuntman Tony Morelli, at high speed and then slowed it down in post-production.
Clever, like faking stop motion.
Exactly. The script apparently described him as the behemoth from the planet Harryhausen, with a roar bigger than Godzilla's.
Amazing detail. And the episode is just packed with little nods like that, isn't it? In-jokes for fans.
Oh, completely. Like Klass County being named after the skeptic Philip J. Klass.
Whose Venus theory the Men in Black actually use in the episode.
Right. And the pilots' names, Shaver and Valley, are nods to UFO authors Robert Schieffer and Jacques Valley.
Sergeant Hynek, too, right? After J. Allen Hynek.
Yep. And Rucky Crickenson is likely named after Roky Erickson, the musician known for eccentric behavior and alien claims.
Even Mulder using the name Reynard, the trickster fox.
In Blaine's video, Dead Alien, Truth or Humbug? That calls back to Morgan's earlier episode, Humbug, and the real Santilli autopsy film.
So meta. What about Detective Manners?
Ah, yes. Named after the director Kim Manners, who is apparently known for swearing a lot.
So the bleeped out swearing was a direct nod to him.
Pretty much. They even thought about casting Kim Manners as Detective Manners, but he was too tired from directing.
Hilarious. And Blaine's t-shirt. Space. Above and beyond.
Yeah, that was Glenn Morgan and James Wong's show, Darren Morgan's brother and his partner. Another little inside reference.
And the potatoes. Schaefer making the mashed potato mountain.
Classic Close Encounters nod. And Rookie being a lineman. Also like in Close Encounters.
Just layers upon layers. Even the cover of Chung's book in the episode looks like Whitley Strieber's Communion.
It's like a game for viewers who are really paying attention.
What's also kind of poignant looking back is that this was Darren Morgan's last episode for the original run.
Yeah, he left after this one. Said he felt he couldn't keep up with the pace, apparently. Though he did do a similar episode for Millennium later. Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense.
So this episode feels even more like a unique, almost standalone statement from him within the X-Files world.
Definitely. And some of the behind-the-scenes stuff is wild. Like the script describing the opening shot as a Star Wars homage.
No way, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it also specified using Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire and Social Distortion's version 2 for certain scenes.
But they didn't end up using them.
Nope, not in the final cut. Another what might have been.
Interesting. Any other script details that stand out?
Well, it apparently explicitly stated the gray alien ship, inside and out, was the same design used in the earlier Dwayne Barry episode.
Ah, it's a subtle visual continuity link.
And Lord Kinboat's UFO sound was described as revving like Steve McQueen's car in Bullet.
Okay, that's just cool.
And Harold's torn shirt was meant to look like Stanley Kowalski's from Streetcar Named Desire.
Wow. So many little references packed in. What about Blaine's poster? The I Believe one.
Right, the classic I Want to Believe poster, but in his apartment, want to is crossed out. It just says, I believe.
Perfect summary of the episode's skeptical take, almost.
Morgan was apparently proud this episode didn't have a high body count, didn't need a death for an act break, like usual.
Breaking the formula.
Yeah, and he admitted it was meant to be confusing. He hoped people would just go with it and be entertained by the complexity.
Which I think works. The repeated lines, too, like, I know how crazy all this sounds, or calling people dead man.
Very self-aware. And you have to give credit to the director, Rob Bowman, for juggling all those perspectives and keeping it coherent, even in its confusion.
Definitely. It feels very postmodern. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All the self-reference, the unreliable narrators, questioning objective truth.
Mm-hmm.
It ticks a lot of those boxes.
Yeah.
The script even references Nabokov's Pale Fire with Lord Kinbote's name.
And the satire of the Fox alien autopsy special. That's maybe the most meta part.
Oh, absolutely. Having Mulder and Scully supposedly involved, the cheesy narration by the stupendous Yappy.
Who was David Duchovny's stand-in, right?
Yeah. And Scully's line, "This is so embarrassing. It's the show commenting on itself and on the network."
The censorship joke with Detective Manners, the bleeps, that was also deliberate.
Apparently, Morgan and Bowman found it pretty funny, leaning into the broadcast standard stuff. And again, a nod to the real Kim Manners.
There are even little digs at the actors, kind of.
Gentle ones, yeah. Blaine calling Mulder a mandroid, possibly referencing critiques of Duchovny's acting style sometimes.
And the comment about Scully's hair being too red.
A nod to Gillian Anderson being a natural blonde who dyed her hair for the show. Little winks for those in the know.
It really feels like Jose Chung himself is Morgan's voice in the episode sometimes.
You could definitely read it that way. Chung's cynicism, his thoughts on storytelling versus truth, comparing hypnosis to writing, feels very authorial.
And the sources mention Morgan maybe sympathized more with Scully.
Yeah, and you see that alignment between Chung and Scully's skepticism in the episode, a shared questioning of easy answers.
What's really mind-blowing, though, is how it seems to predict future X-Files stuff.
It's uncanny, isn't it? The idea of two different alien species, the government faking alien encounters, that all became major plot points later on.
It's like this weird, jokey episode accidentally laid groundwork for the serious mythology to come.
Or maybe it just tapped into the core anxieties and themes the show was always exploring.
Like the whole idea of alien abduction narratives themselves. The episode looks at it not just as fact or fiction, but as a cultural story, a way to process things.
Exactly. Which aligns more with Scully's psychological or scientific explanations rather than Mulder's belief.
It really feels like a perfect capsule of Darren Morgan's themes: normalcy, paranoia, human connection, or lack thereof.
A fitting end to his original run, even if it wasn't planned that way. It just sums up his unique perspective so well.
Okay, so we've definitely taken a deep dive into the strange, funny, and surprisingly deep waters of Jose Chung's From Outer Space.
Yeah, hopefully walking through the story, the crazy behind-the-scenes stuff and the themes has been as interesting for you listening as it was for us.
What really sticks with me is how it uses humor and absurdity to ask some pretty big questions about truth and storytelling.
Absolutely. It makes you think, doesn't it? In this age where we're bombarded with conflicting narratives, how do we figure out what's real?
Or even, does it always matter if it's real versus just the story we tell ourselves or the story we're told?
Yeah, and if everyone's perspective is inherently subjective, if every account is flawed, what does that mean for how we understand anything? The world, ourselves.
Deep stuff hidden in a comedy about aliens. I really think you should watch it again if you haven't recently, keeping all this context in mind.
See what else you notice. Think about how the humor works, how it lets the episode tackle these tricky ideas.
It's definitely an episode that keeps giving.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you a richer appreciation, not just for this episode, but maybe for how complex and layered even seemingly strange TV can be.